with in regards to a famous Iraqi rabbi. His name was Rabbi Shlomo Yechezkel Yehuda. Very great rabbi of his time. He was born in English in 1819 and he passed away in the year 1871. He was famous Sephardi rabbi from Baghdad, great rabbi in Jerusalem. I believe ממנהיגי הקהילה היהודית בירושלים during the 19th century. He was a Rosh Yeshiva of Hizzedkel in Jerusalem, and he was a cousin, I believe, of Rabbi Yosef Chaim of Baghdad, the author of the famous book called the Ben Ish Chai. Very, very great rabbi. And we spoke about several of his family members also on this series, so now it's a great privilege to speak about Rabbi Shlomo Yechezkel Yehuda, respectively. So he was born in Baghdad in Iraq. At that point in time, it was part of the Ottoman Empire, and his father's name was Rabbi Yechezkel Yehuda. Very, very great rabbi, and I think one of the great people, let's just say great men. He was, defined as in Baghdad. I believe he was a wealthy man, his father was, and was a leader of the community also. So very prosperous positions and standings in of itself. So that we have to point out from the outset. And I think his mother's name was Rabbanit Rachel. She happened to be the daughter, I believe, of Rav Moshe Chaim, who was a great rabbi of his time. Rav Moshe Chaim of Baghdad, spoken about before. He lived between 1752 and 1836. He was a great rabbi, and I think he was a grandfather actually of Chacham Yosef Chaim, the author of the Ben Ish Chai, and was also one of the rabbis of Basra in Baghdad, respectively, in his time, and very, very well traveled. The rabbi we've spoken about, Rav Moshe Chaim of Baghdad, on various occasions before. He was I think his rabbi himself was Rav Tzadka Chotzin Harishon, and he had great Talmudim, including Rabbi Abdallah ben Moshe Chaim and Rabbi Yaakov bar Yosef HaRofeh, and various other great rabbis who've mentioned back in this series on various occasions before, we have to point out. Okay, let's progress over here. So, so he was, Rav Shlomo Yechezkel Yehuda was, so connected to Rabbi Moshe Chaim, who was a rabbi of the city of Baghdad. And I think there was connection with Rabbi Abdallah ben Moshe Chaim and Rav Eliyahu ben Moshe Chaim. So Rav Abdallah Moshe ben Moshe Chaim, we also spoke about before here on this series. He also was a great rabbi, Rosh Yeshiva, man of the Tzibur in of itself, and was a great rabbi also in Jerusalem, once again connected to Chacham Yosef Chaim of Baghdad, the famous Ben Ish Chai. So we have to point that out also. And okay, I think come on the year Heitav Kuf Pei Dalit, it was probably around. He was only about 5 years of age. Sadly, his mother passed away at that point in time, and him and his older brother, I think at that point in time he was very close. The brothers were raised, I think, in the grandfather's house at that stage in time. Obviously, the great Rabbi Moshe Chaim. While he was young, he would learn, I think, yeshiva inside the city of Baghdad, respectively. I think under the auspices of his grandfather, Rabbi Moshe Chaim, who was, I think, the rabbi of the city at that point in time. Then I think it was the Heitav Kuf Tzadik Hey, we're talking about now, in the earlier mid parts of the 1830s, if I'm not mistaken. More would actually happen at that point in time. Remember Baghdad, there was a very much growing Jewish community as the time went on. So he was, I think, very interesting enough, he would go, I think, have a connection to India at that stage in time. Remember, there was a big Iraqi Indian community. I'll say what it says over here in Hebrew, respectively. B'shnat Heitav Kuf Tzadik He ger aviv le'ir Calcutta in Hodu in India. Aval beno Rav Shlomo nishar b'Baghdad etzel mishpachto sabo mishpachto ishto kedei lamshich lelmod b'yeshiva b'Baghdad. So it's talking about how Rav Shlomo would actually stay in Baghdad to be among his family, his grandfather, and really be imbued and increase in Torah. Then come with the Hebrew month of Sivan, I think in Heitav Reish Yudalid. I think that was around the time period of 1854. At that point in time, he would be in his 30s. Rav Shlomo would decide to actually go with his wife and his, I think, children at that point in time to Jerusalem. And I think it would be a journey that would take 40 days. I think there was a big, let's just say, amount of camels that would all go together in a shira, a big group through the desert. And I think they would go through Arum Sova, if I'm not mistaken, in Syria, and there's famous story with in regards to Shabbat, where he wouldn't want to travel on Shabbat. I'll say what it says in Hebrew over here, just using Wikipedia as a source. It says, Mikevan, Rabbi Shlomo lo rotza linsua b'Shabbat, hu shilem lemanhig she'aret agimlim od 140 franc al kol Shabbat. בנוסף לשכר הנסיעה הרגיל. He paid a lot of money so that they won't travel on Shabbat. ובעד תשלום זה, עצרה כל השאלה בשבתות, רבי שלמה היה יכול לא לנסוע בשבת, בלי להישאר לבדו במדבר. So obviously he didn't want to be by himself inside the middle of the desert, and he paid this massive amount of money so that it will come on that. כשהגיעו לחלב, הם נחו כמה ימים, והמשיכו בשערת אחרת עד שבחודש אלול הגיעו לירושלים. They would actually stop, I think, at that point in time for a few days, and then we would actually come, I think, and arrive there in the month of Elul to Yerushalayim. אם באו לירושלים, החל פקח על ישיבת כנסת יחזקאל, שהוקמה מימיו, אביו על שמו. ובראש עמד דודו, רבי עבדאללה בן משה חיים, who we spoke about before, who was his relative. כמו כן, הוא הפך לאחד ממנהיגי הקהילה הספרדים בירושלים, בכלל בקהילה עולי עיראק בפרט. So, yeah, very, very interesting what actually happened. So we spoke about how he would not travel on Shabbat, he would arrive. They began to oversee the Yeshivat Knesset Yechezkel, which was established by the help of the funding of the family, and was headed. He became one of the leaders over there, obviously close with Rabbi Abdullah ben Moshe Chaim, and obviously there was an Iraqi contingency that was coming over there in Jerusalem. There was many different countries with different cultures at that point in time from Jerusalem. Then come with the year Hey Taf Reish Chav Sofet. We're talking about the year 1859, 1860, approximately. I believe his father sadly passed away. It was reported over, so that obviously would be devastating at that point in time. He would inherit, I believe, well, I'll say what it says here. Nifta avivuhu yaresh menu nechasim b'hodu b'Iraq. He would actually inherit properties which were in India and in Iraq at that point in time. Remember, Iraq and India had strong ties the Jewish community did in of itself. Shinahalu bi'edei achiv. ההכנסה שקיבל רבי שלמה מנכסיו הגיעו לשווי של 75,000 לירות שטרלינג, וכן הוא היה יכול לשבת בירושלים ולעסוק בתורה בנחת. So because of his wealth, it would actually give him the opportunity to study Torah in a relaxed frame of mind, בכבוד, with a lot of honor and wealth satisfaction. וגם לתרום ביד רחבה למוסדות תורה ונזקקים. He'd be able to donate to various different needy people and Torah organizations. And then I think he would, בשנת זו, I think in that year, קנה רבי שלמה בית ברחוב חב"ד ברובע יהודי בירושלים. He would be able to purchase seemingly a street, I think, in the square of Jerusalem, והקים בו את ישיבת חסד אל. He would be able to establish this very prominent yeshiva at that point. ועמד בראשו עד יום פטירתו. He'd be able to be the Rosh Kollel until he passed away. בישיבה זו עסקו בהלכה בקבלה. This was a yeshiva, Talmudic Academy, that would concentrate on learning Jewish law over there, and Kabbalah. ולמדו בה גדולי חכמי ירושלים, one of the great rabbis of Jerusalem would learn there. בישיבה התקיים מניין מכוונים, שבו התפלל רבי שלמה עם מקובלי הישיבה, על פי כוונת האריזל והרשש. They'll be able to pray with the intentions of the famous Arizal, Ari HaKadosh, and also the Rashash, Rabbi Shalom Sharabi. Very interesting. Remember, Rabbi Shalom Mizrahi Sharabi was an outstanding Kabbalist. He was born in 1720, passed away in 1777, and was a great rabbi, the head of the famous Yeshivat Bet El, and the author of the Perush Shamash, and a very, very great rabbi who we mentioned about on various occasions before here on this series, which I recommend everyone to actually look at. So that's very, very interesting. So we can go on. So he would, if we just go on at the moment, so just to explore more within regards to Rav Shalom, who we're speaking about today. Obviously, Rabbi Shlomo Yechezkel Yehuda, what a great rabbi was, and you can see how well connected he was. I'll continue what it says in Hebrew over here. Hachmei b'tamdei hayeshiva achlu v'yeshnu kol hashuvah b'mitcham hayeshiva al cheshbono shel rosh hayeshiva Rabbi Shlomo. He would be in charge of overseeing all the great talmidim within regards to all the important matters within regards to him. Rabbi Shlomo. Rak b'Shabbatot chazru chachmei b'talmidei yeshiva lebateihem. On Shabbats they would actually return the talmidim to their houses. Rav Shlomo miyamat את חזקת ישיבה בעיקר מכספו haprati. He would, I think, help stand the yeshiva, especially with the wealth. Haprati. Aval gam mitrumat she'asaf mikruvei mishpachto Baghdad u'Baudu. I think there will be also assistance with regards to, let's just say, financial help from people from India and Baghdad. Rabbi Shlomo Kanas Varim Rabim bought many different books. Besisim v'nedarim ha'amedim b'otzah svarim shel yeshivato. There'll be a otzah of svarim, a treasure chest of books inside the yeshiva in itself that will be purchased, I think, through him. Toalet Yehudei Yerushalayim bichlal chachmei tamidei yeshiva b'prat, for the yeshiva students themselves. B'nusaf lakamat yeshiva kana Rabbi Shlomo et karkaot hakfar ha'aravi ka'olania. I think he will buy an area of Kolonia, the land itself. It's kfar in the Arab village in the mountains of Jerusalem, if I'm not mistaken. Shemarav Yerushalayim, ubana sham batim bahem hityashvu banav, Rabbi Shaul v'Rabbi Benjamin. I think his sons would live there. V'chatano Yehoshua Yelin. Very interesting enough. So apparently his son-in-law was a man of the name Yehoshua Yelin. So he was, if the Yelin family itself was a famous Zionistic family, which we have to point out. And Yehoshua Yelin, I think, if I'm not mistaken, he most famously, maybe there were very famous Zionistic figures with the family name Yelin. So I wonder if they were actually, I assume they were actually connected, if I'm not mistaken, but that's something that we'll have to check about at a later stage in time over here. But I think there was definitely a connection, and I think we mentioned about them on various occasions before. I think he was connected to David Yelin, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so I think his son was David Yelin, who was a very famous, let's say, Zionistic figure that we have to point out also. So that's very interesting. So maybe we will record a video within regards to Yehoshua Yelin at a later stage in time. We can see how the family was really connected. Now, Rabbi Shlomo Pa'al Harbat Yishuv Amachlakot V'Haskasuchim Ben Bnei Ha'ida Sfardit Ben Bnei Ha'ida Ashkenazit Birushalaim. So he was connected to both congregations, both the Sephardi community and Ashkenazi community. V'Tamach Kaspit B'Shivato U'Mostot Shel Bnei Kol Ha'idat. So he would actually divide up and give not just money to the Sephardi community, also to the Ashkenazi community. Lemashal, Hu Hishtatet B'Miyamamin בנייתו של בית כנסת המרכזי לקהילת החסידים בירושלים. בית הכנסת תפארת ישראל, I think he would very much help with regards to the synagogue, called בית כנסת תפארת ישראל. בנוסף, הוא עודד את צאצאיו לא להינשא דווקא לבני עדתם. He wanted that his descendants would marry not just Sephardi or Ashkenazi or vice versa. ולכן כמה מילדיו נישאו לבני העדה האשכנזית. So some of the family members would marry Ashkenazim. דבר שהיה חריג באותה תקופה. כמו כן, I don't think it was that common at that time period, let's just say the cross of marriages in of itself, the crisscrossing of the marriages. כמו כן, הוא הקים ישיבת בימינו בשם כנסת ישראל, והעמיד בראשו את רבי יצחק פראג' ובלטקה. So he was another famous person, שהיה נוהג במנהגי הספרדים, למרות מוצאו האשכנזי בהיותו יליד אוסטרו-הונגריה, תלמידי חכם סופר, ועוד מנהיגי כולל הונגרים, respectively. So that's very interesting. Rabbi Yitzchak Prague or Latka, I think, lived between 1820 to 1900 and very much was a rabbi, I believe, in Jerusalem in his time, which we actually have to point out. So let's continue over here. Now, to say more with regards to him, Rabbi Shlomo Pa'al Harbeli Yishuv HaMachlakot. Okay, so we spoke about that. Okay, Rabbi Shlomo nahag lo lechalek et hakesef la'aniyim ba'atzmo, elu hu minei adam acher sheyichelek et tzedakah la'aniyim. So he wanted to appoint someone else to distribute the money to the poor people. Kacha aniyim lo yadu mi hanoten. He didn't want people to know that it was him specifically giving it, so they'll probably feel bad. B'shnat hei tafresh lamed bet niklo askav shel Rabbi Shlomo שנהלו על ידי אחיו למשבר כלכלי, והוא לא היה יכול לתרום לעניים כהרגלו. בערב חג סוכות הגיע הממונה על החלוקות נדבתו של רבי שלמה כדי לקחת כספים ולחלקם לעניים. רבי שלמה נאלץ לספר לממונו על מצבו הכלכלי. הממונה חזה על העניים במפח נפש, ואמר להם שהכסף שהיו מקבלים היה מנדבתו של גביר מסוים. והגביר הזה פשט את הרגל. העניים זעמו ודרשו לדעת מה שמו של הגביר. המונה נאלץ לגלות לעניים את שמו של רבי שלמה. העניים הביאו את כל בני משפחתיים, ויכלו לצעוק ולבכות. רבי שלמה ששמע את צעקות העניים, יצא מביתו וישב בין העניים, ואמר להם, מה עתה גם אנוכי לכם נדמתי, כלומר גם אני עוני כמוכם. נכדו David Yelin, he will actually speak about this, write about Rabbi Shlomo. אז סיפר שרבי שלמה חלה בעקבות הצער על כך שאין ביכולתו לסייע לעניים. So he would actually chronicle this over with regards to this entire episode, which we have to point out in of itself. So that's very, very interesting. Yeah, so that's that I recommend everyone to look at the book of David Yelin over there on that specific topic. So now, what's interesting is I think after a week of sickness, I think it was time period of Simchat Torah, the festival on Chav Bet Tishrei, 22nd of Tishrei, Hait Afresh Bet, he passed away, and he was buried, I believe, in the Chelkat Nevi'im, in the Beit Kvarot Yehudi, Bahar Zaitim, in the Mount of Olives burial plot. Al Mitzvah Shel Rabbi Shlomo Nichtav, it's written over there. I'll state a quote of I hope I pronounce it correctly. Hamakom hamerachem hu yirachem al nefesh ruach v'nish neshama Shlomo ben Yechezkel Yehuda zichrono livraha shaya melomed biyisurin v'rodef tzedakah v'chesed machzik yedei lomdei Torah nilkach lebeit olamo beit biyom chapet lechodesh tishrei shanat heit hafresh lamed bet leprat ktan ta nafshu tzoro b'tzoror hachayim amen. So among his family, on I think it was Chodesh Nisan, Hitav Kuf Tzadik Daled Kshu Ben 15 when he was 15. He had Chaten Rabbi Shlomo in Rina, so he got married to Rina, but Faraj Chaim, the daughter of Faraj Chaim, and Ishto Rina Aita Isha Chochma Sheita Beki'a Abatanach. She apparently was very well versed in Torah Nevi'im Ketuvim. Zoha Va'ayin Yaakov also, interesting enough. So Benagli Kro Beikit Aninut Et Ituni Hatkufa. Achotza shel Rina nasa leDavid Sasson, if I'm not mistaken. Very interesting enough. So David Sasson was another famous rabbi in of itself. I think part of the Shilet Europa shel Mishpachat Sasson, a famous family, and I think Harocha connected by the name Rothschild shel Mizrach, which is very interesting. So hopefully we'll be able to record a video within regards to him at a later stage in time. I think he was, So I'm not sure if we did actually record a video of him, but we'll double check that at when that point comes. Avi mishpacha ha'atzalut Yehudit Odit mishpachat Sasson shezachta lekinui haRothschildiyim shel Mizrach, the Rothschild version of Mizrach in itself, of the Sephardi community. Rabbi Shlomo v'Rina noldu arba banim v'arba banot. So the first one we're speaking about Shaul Nolad. He was born in Hait Hafresh in Baghdad. He would get married to Akla, his daughter of Rabbi Yeshua Bardaki, another rabbi we spoke about, who was a great Talmud Chacham, and they would, I think, live in Eretz Yisrael, if I'm not mistaken. And he was connected, I think, to Rabbi Yoshua, to Yoshua Yelin, and his brother, Rabbi Benjamin. They would actually establish a yeshuv, I think, of Motza, if I'm not mistaken, which is very, very interesting. Another one of his sons, Benjamin Yechezkel Yehuda, who was another person born in the year Tafresh, Hey Tafresh Daled in Baghdad, would get married to Rabbinate Bechor Rivka Bergman, I believe, very interesting enough. And more can be said with regards to him. Another one of his sons who we spoke about just before, Rabbi Faraj Chaim. He was one of the great rabbis of Jerusalem, the author of the Pit Vit Palel Hana and the Yerat Hadvash. Great rabbi, he actually, his Hiluleh is today on the Yud Zayin Tishrei. He was also a Shluchei Rabbanan. Another one of his sons, Moshe Shimon, Nolad, I think, born in the year Hait Hafresh Yud Daled, and he would get married to Rabbinit Devorah from the Levi family. And his son, again, Yaakov Tzvi Yechezkel Yehuda, interesting enough. Serach, another one of his daughters, would get married to Yoshua Yelin, who we have to point out over here. That's also a very important history in of itself. And Mazal Tov, another one of the daughters, she would get married to, if I'm not mistaken, Yoshua Tzion Levi. Chana Katon, I think, also will get married to the famous judge Malkiel Meni, and also Rivka. I'm not too sure, they're not too sure the details with regards to her respectively, but he was a great rabbi of his time. He had great descendants. I think among his grandchildren, including Rabbi Shlomo Yechezkel Yehuda, another rabbi I believe we mentioned about on various occasions before, David Yelin, Yechezkel Yehuda, another famous educator, I believe, and translator, Rachel Danin, and Eliezer Yelin was another person, a famous Mandes, famous architect, I believe. Avinoam Yelin, many people from the Yelin family, Ezra Danin, also respectively. Some of these were important Zionistic figures, let's just say, in of itself, of their time period. So that's very, very interesting. So I recommend everyone to learn more about the great rabbis of yesteryear. Now, friends, we are a community here. We're learning about the great Chachamim of yesteryear. Now, if you descend from any of the great Chachamim we are speaking about here in this series, don't hesitate. Please send me an email. I would love to hear more information about the great rabbis. I think it's very important people speak. We learn about them, and just the importance of what great influences they had in of itself. Now, friends, we are nearing at the moment a staggering 7,500 subscribers, which is an achievement I don't think we ever would have expected from right at the beginning when we started this project over here. So please, we're going from strength to strength. Subscribe to the community over here as we're growing at the moment, and please learn more about it, about the great rabbis, and learn more, and please join, and wishing you blessings here from Israel. We happen to be at this point in time during the middle of the festival of Sukkot at the moment, so that is very interesting. And it's just important, I think, to just study about the great rabbis and gain the wisdom and breathe the wisdom in of itself of yesteryear. So I think on that note, it's a good time to wish you all a moadim l'simcha, chagim, zmanim v'sason, also a chag sameach, because obviously we are in this precious chag at the moment. We're obviously very, very much all enjoying it, and to learn more about the great chachamim of yesteryear, and the great Rosh Yeshivas and the famous Chesed El Yeshiva in Jerusalem. I recommend everyone to look more within regards to that, and this very, very famous family in of itself. So that's very interesting. So please, wishing you well, and thanks for spending time to watch.